Hi, this is Krista, and I am going to do the 2-minute oral presentation for my close reading assignment. I watched The Skeleton Dance, which is a short film by Disney Cartoons. It's drawn by Ube Iwerks, and the music is by Carl W. Stalling. Um, Basically, this work was released in 1929, and it is just a short Halloween film. So the gist of it is that it kind of sets up this graveyard scene. There are a few animals who are kind of personified that set up the scene and kind of introduce these four skeleton figures who come in and perform a dance number to a kind of symphonic sounding music track. So I started looking at this choreographic work from a larger standpoint of choreographic themes. A major theme that I kept noticing was repetition as well as symmetry, and I thought that it was very interesting that the choreographer was kind of exploring how the symmetry of the human form can play out in a structural and choreographic way. For example, as simple as it seems, there would be a movement that happened, a phrase that happened on the left side that would immediately be repeated on the right side. And this is in terms of left part of body movement or movement happening on the left side of the screen that was always split by this center line. So I was equating that to the actual form of the skeleton with a rib half and a rib half being divided by the center line of the spine, or your two pelvic halves being divided by the center line of the spine. And just how this simple form can inspire the form of a choreographic piece. Another theme that kept coming up was the idea of the dead versus the living and the restrictions of the human body kind of being lifted after death. A lot of times, the possibility of movement was explored as it would be without the restraints of having actual skin and muscles, which I'll explain in a second. Something interesting that I noticed was a full body swelling that occurred during the breathing of the living characters, which didn't happen in the skeletons. It was kind of this full body swell in the inhale and then total body depletion in the exhale, which just drew attention to the breath. It was an interesting dramatization that made this really distinct separation between the living characters and the skeletal characters. And this breathing also drew my attention because it plays into my own movement practices, especially contact improvisation, how we even use the term puffing up of the body to create kind of a stable base. So it's just this very human thing that only the living characters did, which kind of, again, creates the idea of the restrictions of the living body. The skeletal characters didn't have to breathe. And then just the resilience of the skeletal body. They often would fall and crumble into a pile of bones and then instantly reassemble, which would be impossible for human movement, but I think it also kind of speaks to what our body really can handle and do. Again, I'm kind of thinking through a lens of contact improv, how resilient the body and the bones really can be. The skeletons were personified as playful and mischievous throughout this film, kind of giving them a personality, which I thought was the choreographer insinuating that there is some kind of life post-death. I was curious about his personal stance on that, and I would be curious to kind of see this play out in a choreographic work as well, in my own. I also related this to contact improv and how contact duets are often prompted to be playful and exploratory, and the duets within this work between the skeletons was also that way. And I'll stop there because I'm going over time, and next up will be my solo.